Hi, my name is Alex Sheshunoff, and glad to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
I'm, for the last 2+ months, years, we've been, this remote working lockdown. And now, as businesses, well, everything's an acronym. Now that we're RTO, return to the office, there's a lot of controversy. What should we do? When are we doing it? It's kind of in the news. So I want to try to clear up some big stuff. But one of the first things I thought we might start with is it feels like it's not 100% remote work and it's not 100% back to work. It's a hybridization of work. So it's combining remote working and time in the office. Why don't you take us to school on that a little bit, Alex?
Well, I'll try my best, Mark. So, I think what we're seeing is a lot of people feel like this hybrid model of sort of 2 or 3 days a week in the office and 2 or 3 days a week at home feels like the compromise that we're going to land on. My feeling is, and this is maybe controversial, is that this is a temporary spot, and it's a stepping stone to where I think we're more likely to find ourselves 6 months or a year from now is more like a dumbbell shaped model where you have a lot of people who are working from home and a lot of people who are working from the office. But the hybrid model, I think, is not going to work for both employers and employees for a variety of reasons.
Oh, wow. Oh, I want to tell me more.
Well, let's take it just on the employer side. What has happened is there's been a lot of structural changes that have taken place during the pandemic, where companies have hired remotely. They've accessed this talent pool that is not within driving distance of where they happen to be located, and so they've made these structural changes and they've brought on a lot of good people.
Yeah.
And to return to work entirely is going to be very expensive, and it's also going to decrease the sort of quality and quantity of who they can hire. That's a big one for me. What's your take on that, Mark?
I think that's one of the big wins overall
Mhm.
from the last 2 years from this remote everything is I couldn't have done this show. For
Mhm.
us to do TEDx Santa Barbara, we'll pick 16 guests and then they've got to get here to Santa Barbara and the expense and the training and the time and all of that. And it's challenging every year. Where I've been able to do this show now 110 weeks in a row because I can get people very quickly in this environment. So to me, this is work, what we're doing,
Mhm.
right? Um, but so that's access to talent, like you just said. I think it's fascinating that we can get the very best person in the world to come fill a particular role, if in fact that person doesn't have to at some time need to be in the office, right? We can find the right person. Maybe they come quarterly or whatever that is, but that the employee has maybe the less expensive home in a nicer area, better schools, whatever that is, that their quality of life is improved. Am I on the right track there, Doc?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's been our experience too. We hired a woman on the East Coast, and she has two kind of interesting claims to fame. One is that she claims to have spent more time professionally as an avatar than anybody else on planet Earth, which is, it's got to be somebody. It might as well be Lauren. And two is that Barack Obama follows her on Twitter. But in any case, we would not have been able to find, much less hire Lauren, if we'd been restricted to people who were within driving
Right.
distance of where I am. So it made a huge difference for us. The other thing I think that companies are finding, of course, is that the hybrid environment doesn't offer the cost savings in terms of the commercial real estate. You still have to have an office if you're requiring people to come in 3 days a week,
Yeah.
and whereas a fully remote, obviously takes advantage of that. But then, another big one, and it ties into the talent pool, is sort of companies trying to reach their diversity goals. McKinsey did a study where 60% of Black workers in the US are in the South. And if you want to access that incredible talent pool, and you're based in San Francisco, you're not going to be able to do it in a hybrid environment. What do you think?
I was just reading a whole study about that. It might even have been the same study. I think it was the McKinsey report on that. And as we know, as employers, there's a lot of really important reasons why we want to have diversity and inclusion. I mean, we had someone on the show who, big New York company, she's the senior vice president of that, to make sure that they're getting, and it's not just diversity of ethnicity or gender, but it's ideas and background and culture and travel and all. There's lots of different reasons, and I think we've gotten into these very homogenous environments, whatever they are. They might be homogenous around a way to think, not just how you look. And so one of the things that I miss a lot is actually physically being with people in a very specific situation, which is in brainstorming. And I do a lot of that. A big part of what I do is helping people see what they think, right? And I've had to do that with Jamboards and Wacom tablets, and we can do that, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not like if they fly in the last few weeks and spend the weekend here, and we can draw on the boards here in the house. And so I'm curious what your thought is about that, because it's like an intangible of being able to really be in the space. Do you think that goes away, or we fix that?
We're gonna have to change the way we do brainstorming and sort of creative work together, I think. And in some ways, it sounds like an oxymoron, but you had to create opportunities for sort of structured serendipity. We have to give people the sort of the like tools and the
Yes.
context and the setting to be themselves and to be silly and to have fun and to make mistakes and propose bad ideas.
Yeah.
I know this maybe sounds like the risk of being like a Hallmark card for business, but you really do need sort of casual, informal time together to form connections and to form trust. Because without trust, you don't have creativity, and without creativity, you don't have growth.
So let's dig down on the word informal. Our listener knows that I was in computer animation software, had a company here in Santa Barbara. We did okay. But we took over a huge building right downtown Santa Barbara, and the corporate architects, we were bought by a bigger company, came down, and he said, we have to create a lot of negative space in this building. I said, why? I mean, I want as many offices as we can get. We're hiring, we're growing. And he says, no. To your point, this serendipity, this bumping into one another. Some people will call it the water cooler effect, but no one has water coolers anymore. But it's that idea of that serendipitousness. So what have you found works that somehow gets us there in remote work?
Right. I can say one thing that doesn't work with some experience, which is Zoom. So video conferencing, as we found, it has a way of flattening sound, and everybody sounds like
Yes.
they're the same distance apart from each other.
Huh,
And
interesting. Yeah, sure.
and you get more than 4 or 5 people in a Zoom conference or video conference, and people kind of clam up. They don't talk. There's real Zoom fatigue that's happening, and so
Yeah.
people are turning off their cameras. And
Yeah.
so you have to create this sort of this space, and even if it's a little bit structured or a little bit contrived, but you had to have the water cooler, the virtual water cooler. You have to have this place that people can go and meet and interact in a casual way that isn't so agenda driven. What we find in Zoom meetings is that it's very professional. Everybody goes through the what they need to get done, but you lose that serendipity, you lose that casualness that you need to form trust. And so of course we have our own solution here at Remote Bridge, but regardless of what approach companies take, they need to create these sort of platforms or these environments that will most likely be virtual for people to interact in a more casual, natural way.
So back to the word informal. So there's the formal, let's call it playtime or just group time. It's why software companies, we have the foosball table and the pizza night and the lots of things so that people can get away from the high stress work, the concentration, the brain work, knowledge work, and then go do something fun, and who knows who else is going to be there. So it's that's informal, not planned. It's been set up for that. And then there's the formal of the same thing, which I would call team building. So we're going to take our team and we're going to go to a ropes course, or we're going to go skating, or we're going to go do some structured activity together. But the net goal is around camaraderie and teamwork, and doing things that aren't work but we're together, so we're getting opportunities to talk to one another. So I think that's what you're talking about. So my question to you, that was a lot of exposition there. My question is, do you suggest that there's this place, a room that is built that is kind of the virtual version of the playroom, if you will, where you can just kind of go hang out in between Zoom calls, if you will, and play or do whatever you want to do? And it's the other part of that is that it's okay. Management says it's okay to play. That's the other question there.
Right. No, I think that's what you're going to see more of, are these sort of casual or informal virtual spaces for people to bump into each other, but they need to have something to do there too, because otherwise they plop in there and they're kind of looking at each other and saying, now what? And so there needs to be, it has to be hosted,
It's still
lightly
new.
guided, some
Yeah.
sort of facilitation, and not in a trust fall kind of way, but in a
Explain
like a fun
to
and
our
lighthearted
listener
way. Yeah.
who may
Yeah.
not know what a trust fall is. Tell them what
Oh, a
that
trust
is.
fall. I don't really know what a trust fall is either.
Oh, I
But
do.
okay,
Oh,
tell me.
trust fall is you have maybe 3 or 4 people, and one of you stands up on a table taller than anybody else, and you close your eyes and you fall backwards, and you know that your team is going to catch you. They got your back. That's a trust fall.
Exactly. And that is hard to do in Zoom. It's not recommended. But we can recreate some of that dynamic virtually, whether it's in a sort of immersive 3D environment or in the metaverse or whatever it is. We'll need to create these opportunities to generate trust among ourselves. Otherwise, otherwise I think people end up feeling pretty distended and disconnected from one another, and you're going to see more turnover, because we see this sometimes with our clients, that they have employees and they say, well, if I'm zooming in for company A, I can just as well zoom in to company B. And the transition costs are lower in a remote only environment. And so if you create that connectivity, ultimately you also increase retention, and that drives the bottom line as well.
So there's a couple of pieces here. One is the improved quality of work and the output of work. And I think that most businesses have figured it out, and the ones that haven't are in the process of figuring it out. How do we, the ones who are super paranoid, want to make sure everybody's checking in and logging, and and the distrustful management says, no, I need to see everybody to make sure they're working. And those dinosaurs are slowly going away, right? So that part, I think we're on the way, and it feels like there's more people than ever before figuring out how to solve collaboration. And every day it feels like there's a new tool that comes out that's going to help you solve, like me, my virtual whiteboard problem. The area that I think you've kind of honed in on is, how do we optimize the effectiveness of the non-work interaction that we do as employees that we lost when we got locked down? Did I get that right, Alex?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. There's an economist out of Stanford, Nicholas Bloom, who's really done a lot of the research on this. And what he's finding is that this isn't really a story about productivity, because productivity is basically, in his research, the same for both a remote and an in-person environment. There's maybe a slight advantage, a slight increase in productivity for people working at home, but he's really seeing this as a retention story. And so he looked at a study of like 1,600 people who worked for a travel agency. It's very hard to do double-blind real life studies in studying the work environment. But in the 1,600-person travel agency, they assigned people to either work from home or work in the office. And what they found was that productivity was a little bit increased for remote workers, but the quit rate was down by 1/3 for people working from home. And so it's really about retention. And the number one reason people say they want to work remotely is because of the commute. The commute is really it's terrible, right? And it's an average of 29 minutes per each way in the United States, and even in our big cities, it's not even that much higher. It's like 31 to 33 in New York, San Francisco, and LA. And so that commute is soul sucking. If people haven't seen it, this is going to date me, but the opening sequence to the movie Office Space, there's this guy in traffic and he's being passed by somebody in a walker, and it's maddening. And that is what people feel, and their whole way home they're thinking about, why do I not work from home when they're in traffic.
And, add to that $7 a gallon gasoline.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right.
Right.
There's LinkedIn recently announced that 20% of their job openings were for remote only positions, but 54% of the applications were for remote only jobs. So this is really being driven by the employee who doesn't want to be in the car anymore.
Alex, I feel like we could talk for hours on this. Thank you for helping us. It feels like we're just getting started. Thank you so much for these really great ideas.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.